Hello, today I'd like to talk about open tunings. I'll show you how you can easily find your open tunings yourself without having to go to YouTube or any other source to figure out how to tune to an open D, open G, open E and so on. And then I'll show you some easy chord shapes that you can use with your open tunings. They are common for all of the open tunings, so you should easily adapt that to your playing. And thirdly, I replace the strings on this for a heavier gauge set of strings. I'd like to tune it down to an open C, and that will result in the tension of the strings becoming a bit too loose. So I think a set of heavier gauge, thicker strings really will feel more natural to play. And maybe the tone also will be a bit fuller, I'm not sure. If you're in for this journey, let's go. Alright, so I'll just start by using this guitar to explain how you find the open tunings. I'll use the E string, the thick E string, to explain this. Chords are put together of 3 notes. It's the first note, the third note and the fifth note. And that is, if we take the major scale, the Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. Do, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. Right? You're familiar with that? So if we count from 1, the 1 is called also the root note. So that's the 1 note. And in this case, it's an E. So we're going to make the open tuning for an E chord now. So this is the E, this is the 1, 2, 3. So I said we use the 1, the third and the fifth note. So this is the third note, the 3. And this is a G sharp. We are also using the fifth note, so that will be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the B. So we have the E, the G sharp and the B from the E major scale. You're probably familiar with the E shape on the guitar. This is a normal tune guitar. This is the E chord. This is really easy. What you need to do is really to adjust the strings that you're touching with your chord shapes. In this case, this is the only open tuning that I know that this is the case, that you just adjust these 3 strings that you're pressing down. This is already an E, so we don't touch that. The next note on the regular tune guitar is an A. We can't use that, so we are going to address that and we're gonna put it up to be a B. This is a B, because this note is an A and the next is a B. So then I'll just tune this up to be a B. The next string is a D string. We are not using that note. We are using the E, the G sharp and the B. So we have to change this to be one of those notes. And the easiest way to do that is to make it an E, because that is also the note that we are pressing down in that E shape. So I'm going to change that string to be an E, from D to E. Okay, so we have now the E, the B and an E again. We are missing the G sharp because the next string is a G. We are not using a G, we're using the G sharp, remember? So I have to pull this to the next closest note, which is the G sharp. Half step up. And the next open string is already a B, and the last one is an E. So we now have all the 3 notes. We have the E, we have the B, we have the E again, we have a G sharp, we have a B and an E. Now we have an open-tuned guitar in the key of E. So I can just strum, and this is the E chord. So it's very easy now if you just use your 1 finger and you have open tunings like this. As I said, I will show you some chord shapes. And if you don't want to wait for that, you can just go follow the timeline. I will see the chapter dividers where you can find the chord shapes. So it sounds good. You have a lot of open strings ringing all the time. And it's also very common to use it with the slides when you use open tuning, so that's a totally different chapter, of course. So that's the open E for you. I will now change to the other guitar because I seldom use open E myself, but it was a good way to show you how easy you can just adapt your regular tuning to an open E. Be aware that you're adding tension to your guitar when you're tuning up. So you might be careful with your guitar if it can take it. So this is now a regularly tuned guitar. It's E, A, D, G, B, E. Yes, we're going to tune it to an open G. This is the G chord with a regularly tuned guitar. All right, let's find the 1, the 3rd and the 5th note of the G major scale. So I can start on the thick E string. This is the G note. So we are looking for the 3rd note now. 1, 2. So Do, Re, Mi. That's the B. We have the G as the root, and we have the B as the 3rd note. So the 5th note, 1, 2, 3, 5, is a D. So we have the G, the B, and the D. So that's the notes that will be the tuning for this open G now. So I could also, of course, tune it to the strings that I'm pressing down here. So I could tune up to a G here, up to a B here, and go up to a G on that string. But that will add a lot of tension to the strings going up. So I prefer to go down. And the way that I'll do it then is that the E, if we start with the thickest string, the E will now have to be one of these 3 notes. It will have to be a G, a B, or a D. So the simplest way is to go to a D, which is 1 step down. So I'll tune it down to a D. But you just do it roughly now. When I tune, it will affect all the other strings as well, so I have to fine tune it afterwards. Okay, so the next string is the A string on a regularly tuned guitar. So that can't be in there because we need a G, the B, or a D. So for the A string, I will go down to a G. Yeah. And the next note is a D. It's already in there, so we have the G, B, and D. So this is the 5th note. Let's keep it. The next string is a G string. It's also in there. That's the root, that's the G. The next string is a B. It's also in there, so we'll just keep it. And then the last one is the thin E. It has to go down to the D. So this now only includes the 3 notes that we need from the G major scale to have an open G tuning. The D note, that's the 5th note. The G, the 1st note or the root. The D again, the G again, and there's the B, the 3rd note. And the D. So it sounds like this. And with this also you can play your 3 chord progression with just adding 1 finger to bar the... Yeah. Or you can use chords, which I'll get back to in a while. I'd like to tune it to an open D. I guess you get the drift now with how to find notes. So we already have a D note on the low D string. So to find the 3 notes now, do you remember? We need the 1st, the 3rd and the 5th. So if we play the major scale, this is the D. So the D major scale will be Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti. All right. So we have the 1st the root, that's the D, and we need a third, and the third note in the D major scale is an F sharp, this one. So we have the D and we have the F sharp. So what is now the fifth note that we want also? So we have the 1, 2, 2. There you go, it's an A. So we have the D, we have an F sharp, and we have an A. So that's our notes, D, F sharp, and A. Let's tune it. So we have already here the D. We're not going to use a G any longer, we're going to use an A instead. So we just go back to like it is on a regular tuned guitar, it will be an A. The D is fine, we are in an open D, so that's fine. We are not going to use a G, so I'm going to go down. Here comes the F sharp. Half step down will be an F sharp. And the B goes down to be an A. One whole step down to an A. And here's the D again. Yeah. So, and here you can also use just the one finger bar if you'd like to. Yeah, but with chords. Open D. So the open D has been my favorite tuning for now. Now we are going to go deeper to an open C. All right, so I've now retuned the guitar to be on regular tuning. E, A, D, G, B, E. So we're going to tune it down now to an open C. So we have to find the three notes that we're looking for. You remember the first, the third, and the fifth note in the major scale. So we're now in the major scale of C. So I'll start with the C here on the A string or in the third fret. So that will be the C. That's the scale. And the first note, the root, is the C. The third note, C, D, E. So we are wanting the E. That's the third note. And then the fifth note will be F, G. So C, D, E, F, G. So C. That's how we'll tune the guitar now. So I'll start with the low E string and get it down to a C. That's deep. It's 2 whole steps down. So even the tuner struggles now to. There you go, C. And for the A string, we'll go down to the G. And the D string will go down to C. The G string, that's a note that's really in there. It's a bit high pitched for this tuning, so I will tune the G string down to an E. Just stay with me. Then the B string will be tuned down to a G. And the E string goes down to a C. All right, so here's the open C tuning. It sounds really nice with this deep tuning, I think. And I think we'll be very fine with the slide also. I can feel that the strings are feeling a bit loose. That's why I would like to now change the strings to a thicker set. Let's see how this guitar now will feel with a set of thicker strings. I think that will help because I can feel that they are a bit flimsy when they are tuned that low. Exciting. These are the brand that I'll use, 13 to 56. Okay, new strings. They feel a bit more sturdy. Maybe it's me imagining things, but I think they sound better. Of course they are new, so they will be a bit brighter. And this is not a huge upgrade in gauge. It's just a bit up, but I think it helps. But I think it could go even thicker, especially on the lower strings. Yeah, maybe I should try that and see if I can find a setup with even thicker strings. So this is now an open C. Could easily become my new favorite open tuning. I can see that. Let's talk about some chords now. The first one I'm going to show you is in the shape of an E chord, an E7, what you would normally play it as on a regular tuned guitar. So it's just my two fingers here that you can see. It's the shape of the E7 chord that you would use on a regular tuned guitar. In the second fret I press down on the A string, referring again to the regular tuning here. And on the G string I'm pressing down on the first fret. So the two together. So what that gives you is really the fourth chord in the key we're in. So we are now in the key of C, as this is an open tuned to C. So we have the C here, and then the fourth chord of the C and F. And also you can say that this is a G, the fifth chord. It's kind of. So this has of course a name. I'm not sure what kind of G this is, but if it sounds good, it is good. And you can of course use the bar like this to get to the same chord. And you don't have to include all of the strings on the guitar, just the selected few that you think sounds better. So that's one shape. There's one more shape that is really easy, and that is just to move this one string up so they are in the same fret. I'm not sure if you can see that I'm pressing down on the A string and the G string in the same fret. You can't do that in every fret, and you can't do this in every fret either, but you have to listen in for where it is. It's like, and here comes that shape where they are both in the same fret. No, that's wrong. That's the correct one. So you should practice that and listen in for where it is sounding good. And you can play all the strings, they will sound good. All right, now the exciting thing when you play open tuning is when you discover the minor chords. So when you have this E7 shape, Let's keep that index finger where it is and move the middle finger up to the deepest string in the second fret and add your ring finger on the A string, as I call it for the regular tuning reference, also in the second fret. So it's so that will be pressed down on the two first strings, and then there's an open string, and we are pressing down in the first fret on the G string. So there's a chord for you, a minor chord. So as we are in the key of C, this now is the C, and this will be the D minor chord. Here's the E minor chord, D minor chord, C. So this minor chord shape you can also move around. Find out how it works. There's other finger placements, of course, that will provide a minor chord. So the third note in the scale, we just talked about that when we used the first, the third and the fifth note in the scale, the major scale. The third is defining if it's a major chord or a minor chord. So a flat third would be a minor. So that's a way to figure out when you are looking for how to play minor chords, find the minor third and you have a minor. So these shapes are valid for the C tuning, the D tuning and the E tuning, not for the G tuning, the open G. So I'll tune this guitar to an open G and I'll be right back. So one thing to consider when you're playing in open G is that the root note is no longer on the deepest string. It's on the A string, relating to the regular tuning again, the A string. So that's why also Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones removed the low E string on his famous open-tuned Telecaster. It was just in the way, he thought.
You can probably do that, but we'd have to take this string right off.
The shapes that I just showed you for the open C or for the open D and also for open E, we just move them one string down like this. From here, that's the E shape, we've moved them down, so now it's the A minor 7 shape. That's because the root is now moved one string down, and we also moved then our finger placement one string down. That's all there is to it. All else is the same. And also for the minor chords, same, instead of here, you just move them one string down. So there's several ways of doing this, so just let's get you started on using chords. And you know that when this guitar now is in open G, if you forget about the deep string here and play, the guitar knows all the Stones songs. Yeah, have fun with that. All right.